Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waitin' for me. My little wooden radio clock played music just as the sunbeams began to break through our window curtains and cast a warm glow on our yellow wallpaper. I grumbled and sat up in bed, fluffing my fur before yawning and stretching my arms and legs. My husband, Martin, shuffled under the covers next to me. His fluffy little ithweed mane frazzled and rife with bedhead. My lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailin'. I tried to get out of bed, but he wrapped his arms around my chest and gently pulled me back into bed. "Just 5 more minutes," he mumbled. "I don't want to get up yet. Somewhere beyond the sea, he's there watchin' for me." I giggled and obliged, kissing his forehead before snuggling up next to him, his amber eyes admiring mine. "You look handsome today," I said, my voice just a tad bit sultry. "Are you ready for the last day of your first week? Are you excited?" He sighed, as he sat up and pulled me close and kissed me before turning to the window and watching the sun rise. "I'm just happy to finally have a good job and for us to have a house," he said as he took my hand in his. "We have our very own house, small as it may be. If I could fly like birds on high, then straight to his arms, I'd go sailin'. We don't need a lot of space yet," I reminded him. "It's just us and our child." I placed my paw on my belly absent-mindedly, the bump just starting to show. It was why we left, wherever we lived before, to give our baby a nice, quiet place to live. I had a hard time remembering where we were living before, but that didn't really matter, did it? We were here now, and that was enough. We had everything we needed here, and the few locals we'd met had all said Rockport was so nice that we'd never leave. "Hey, you're right, we shouldn't think about it too much and just enjoy the moment," Martin told me as got out of bed before mumbling about hearing only static as he flicked the radio to another station. "This one playing That's All Right by that hot new artist Elvis. It's going to be a big weekend. Don't you have a blueberry pie to make for the county fair pie contest?" "Oh, I don't know. I'm new here and I'm sure there's a lot of other bakers who are much better than me," I replied with a shrug. But as Martin prepped for his shower, he gave me a reassuring look. "Don't say that, you're a fantastic baker. I'm sure your pie would blow their socks off." "Really, is that so?" I asked as I stood up and brushed off my nightgown out of habit. "When's the last time I baked something that blew your socks off?" "Well, there was that one time where," he started enthusiastically, but his expression morphed into one of confusion and then of exasperation. "Will, what about?" He seemed to have a hard time thinking of anything, as if he was reaching for something that wasn't there. "Look, all I know is that you're going to do great. Okay?" His lack of memory made me a bit uneasy, but I couldn't blame him. I couldn't remember baking anything else either. "I'll go make some coffee while you get ready for work," I offered. Maybe all this nonsense is because we haven't had our morning cup yet. As the smell of brewing coffee and frying bacon wafted through the kitchen, I opened the little window above the sink to let in some of the fresh Maine air. We lived in a quaint little bungalow next to the shore, a small dock leading out to the ocean for us. Rockport was a peaceful fishing and logging town just about 2 hours northeast Portland. We came here to get away from all the hustle and hustle of the big city, and to raise our expected child in a nice and neighborly place, and so far everything seemed to be going great. Martin came down the steps just as the toast popped out of the toaster, and slid into his seat as I poured him a cup of coffee with just a hint of cream and sugar. I stacked our plates high with bacon, eggs, and toast before whirling around and placing a plate in front of him. "Enjoy," I said with a smile before sitting down in my seat across from him. "Thanks, honey," he said before digging in, and I admired our home as I poured myself a cup of coffee as well. The walls of our kitchen were decorated with a light blue wallpaper, and the rounded appliances were all white in a stark contrast to the faint gray shade of the cabinets. Everything was nice and new, but it still matched the feeling of the much older bungalow itself, as well as the mild Maine August weather and oceanfront. It was perfect for us. Martin had scarfed down half of his breakfast by the time I began, and he began reading the morning paper, the headline reading Eisenhower rallies support as midterm elections begin. That was another nice thing about living in this kind of small, secluded town. Politics didn't seem to matter too much because everyone simply got along. It was much more neighborly here. "How does lobster thermidor for dinner sound, honey?" I asked as I ate my breakfast, listening to the radio. That song was on again, Beyond the Sea, and it was distracting me as if I was supposed to remember it from somewhere. I zoned out for a bit, only snapping out of it when Martin placed his paw on my shoulder, a look of concern on his face. "Are you okay? I tried to talk to you, but you seemed so distracted by something. Like your mind was somewhere else." Sorry, it's just that darn song again. I keep hearing it." "What song?" "Honey, the radio is just spitting out static," he said as he stood up and changed the station to one playing Earth Angel by the Penguins. I felt frustrated because I know I heard that other song, but it was already twice that day that he had said it was just static. "Did you sleep well last night? Was I snoring too loudly?" he asked me, but I just shook my head. I had slept perfectly fine the night before. "No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's probably just morning sickness or something." "I've never heard of morning sickness like that," Martin said. "Maybe you should go lay down and enjoy your Friday? I'll leave work early, and maybe we can go out somewhere nice instead of you having to cook dinner." But I waved my paw dismissively. "I'm fine. I probably just need to go out for some fresh air. I haven't had much time to do that since we arrived, with all the unpacking and such." Martin didn't seem convinced, but he didn't push the topic any further, either. "If you say so, just promise to be careful." "I will," I promised him as I took his paw in mine. "Just you watch, you'll get home tonight and I'll have dinner done, and then we can watch 20 Questions. "Yeah, that does sound nice," he said dreamily. "And maybe I'll pick out a surprise for you on my way home. Our anniversary is it's coming up, isn't it?" I was going to chide him for forgetting, but I didn't remember the date of our anniversary either, which was strange. That felt like something that shouldn't be easily forgotten. I ended up letting it slide because it was the thought that counted to me in the end. "I'd love that, but it's not much of a surprise if I know you're getting something for me, is it?" He rolled his eyes. I said I might. "Maybe I'll wait until you don't expect it." "Yeah, that's how a surprise works." Martin snorted and pulled his hand back before standing up and adjusting his suit. "Well, I've got to head to work. Enjoy your day." "I will. I've got a lot to do today." Summer in Maine was actually quite mild. When I stepped outside in my favorite dress, the foggy air from the overnight rains and the ocean breezes made the temperature outside feel almost chilly, as if it was late October further south rather than early August. But that didn't stop me at all. My fur was thick and I loved the wet weather, as if it reminded me of home. Yeah, home. I tried to imagine what home looked like, wherever that was, but all I could think of was the bungalow and Martin. I wasn't exactly disappointed by that, but I was definitely put off by the fact that I had a hard time picturing where I grew up in my mind. But I wouldn't dwell on that too much, and I wouldn't let little bouts of forgetfulness like that ruin my plans for the day. Town was just a short walk from home, and I still needed to get ingredients for dinner tonight as well as for the pie. I wanted to make something special for us tonight. The town had wonderful wooden boardwalks alongside the coastline that connected to the bungalow neighborhood we lived in, and while it was a bit of a stereotypically dreary day, walking along the coastline made the cool, salty wind and the mid-morning sun all the more special. I left with my purse as I walked along the boardwalk path, passing people's backyards, which were much rockier than the typical fenced-in backyard of the standard American suburbia, but I liked that. It gave the neighborhood a rugged charm. Most of the homes were dark, with no cars in the driveway and the blinds and shutters closed, but I eventually stumbled upon one with the back door open and a nice table with an umbrella and chairs. An old Zaria couple lounged underneath the shade of the umbrella, sipping on mimosa while the husband read the paper and the wife was tucked into a good novel, The Invisible Man. As I walked past, the husband waved to me and beckoned me over. "How are you doing today, miss? Why don't you join us for a chat?" I stuttered nervously at their friendliness, but I had to remember that this was a much more neighborly place than what I was used to. "I wouldn't want to intrude on your morning," I responded, although I obliged and approached as I spoke. "You two seem like you're having such a peaceful brunch." "Oh, nonsense," the wife said, standing up and placing an old leather strap into her book to serve as a bookmark. "Why don't I pour you a mimosa of your own while you get to introducing yourself? It's not often that we see new neighbors. How did you dash?" "Oh, Harold and I have lived here for a few years now, and we make it our business to become acquainted with all the new locals. After all, it's such a small town, and that leaves little excuse to not at least introduce ourselves. Isn't that right, Harold? Oh, of course, Margie, but you're scaring the poor girl, Harold said with a hint of mirth in his voice. Let her sit down and catch her breath before you smother her. Harold had a voice like an older game show host, smooth, deep, and buttery. He wore a bright pink button-up shirt with warm gray pants and a pink belt, along with loafers. His wife, Margie, wore an elegant black day dress and a matching sun hat that highlighted the pearl-studded piercings on her ears and eyebrows. They exuded a kind of warmth that only grandparents could, the kind that made sure you knew that everything would turn out all right. But at the same time, they were also elegant and refined, like they had spent a lot of time in higher circles. Oh, well, if you insist, then I'd love to join you, I said, sitting down in an available deck chair. But I shouldn't be drinking. I'm expecting. The man covered his mouth out of mild shock and embarrassment. Oh, I'm sorry. I hadn't noticed. Margie, she can't drink. Do we have anything non-alcoholic? I heard a faint confirmation from the kitchen, followed by Margie walking out with a bottle of cola. I'm sorry. If I had known we'd be having guests with that kind of restriction, then I'd have brewed tea or coffee ahead of time. No, this is wonderful, I assured her. I'm just expecting, and it's not a good idea to drink while pregnant. Margie's face morphed from one of apology to one of pleasant surprise. Oh, that's wonderful. How far along are you? I hadn't noticed you were expecting, so you can't be that far along. Only 16 weeks. When my husband and I found out, we decided to move out of the city and to Rockport since we had heard it's such a quaint little town. Oh, you two absolutely made the right move. Moving here after Harold retired was the best decision we ever made. Rockport is such a peaceful and serene little town that you'll never leave. So I've heard, I said. We've only been here for a little under a week, but so far it's been magical. I looked down at the cola she offered me, expecting a Coke, but instead I found a brand I had never heard of. Moxie. I took a sip, and it tasted like root beer but with a more intense, medicinal bitterness at the end that wasn't entirely unpleasant. This is quite nice. I've never heard of Moxie before. Oh, it's a Maine specialty, Harold explained. You know how prideful New Englanders can be of their hometown traditions. Johnny cakes, Moxie, lobster rolls, and red snappers are all things the longtime locals are crazy for. Well, that's good to know, I noted. And speaking of locals, you said you moved here a few years ago, right? Might I ask where you two came from? Oh, that's no trouble at all. Margie jumped at the opportunity to make small talk. Before Harold retired, we lived in... At that moment, Margie's expression morphed into one of confusion. That's odd. I don't remember where we used to live before we moved in. Seriously, Margie, you don't remember where we used to live? It's only been 3 or 4 years. Well, if you're the one with a steel trap for a memory, then why don't you tell her? Margie sassed Harold. Fine, I will, he said with a harumph. We lived in an... I don't remember either. I swear. It's as if it's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't picture it. Really? I asked nervously. I've been having the same problem. Whenever I try to think of home, my mind goes blank. I explained. It happened with my husband, Martin, as well. For a few moments, Margie and Harold were silent as they stared off into space, which was deeply unnerving. But they quickly returned to their normal selves with a mulled jolt. Harold shook his head as if he was snapping himself out of a haze, and his old smile returned to his snout. It must be something in the air then, huh? Or maybe my tired old brain is finally starting to succumb to the wear and tear of getting up there in age. Oh, don't say that, Harold. You're fit as a fiddle, Margie said to him. But you're right, it must be one of those days. I suppose you're right. It's probably nothing to worry about, I said, but inside I felt that something was off. I finished my cola quickly and nodded my head to the couple. It's been wonderful meeting the both of you, but I do have to get going. I need to head into town to buy some food for dinner, and I do intend to explore a little bit while I'm there. Oh, well, it's been a pleasure having you. It's always nice when the neighbors are so neighborly. Isn't that right, Harold? Oh, absolutely, Harold said as he picked up the paper again, his eyes scanning the daily crossword. Do come back, you hear? We'd love to have a proper dinner party with you and Martin. Yeah, I'd like that too, I said. Maybe me and Martin can come over some time, or would you like to see our home? Oh, we'd love to see that wonderful little cottage you two moved into. It's such a quaint little thing with its rustic charm. Does Sunday evening work? Of course. Then it's settled, Margie said. I can't wait to meet your husband. I'm sure you two will be wonderful neighbors.